Thank you, Becky. Okay, so I hope everyone can see my screen. For those of you who are members who are just joining us, Article 20 is pertains to employee rights, and this is thank you, Rachel, for the thumbs up. Our ongoing discussion is about, I guess, what we're calling a mental health inquiry on GAU side, basically an apparatus for GAs to express mental health concerns related to the job or issues they might have with their PI. Bill, as to your anonymity comment, I understand. We understand 100%, and we think that the university, thus far in these negotiations, has kind of reached the point that we're comfortable with on that discussion, right? You've demonstrated an intent that you will try to keep it as anonymous as possible, but you have laws to contend with. The nature of the beast is such that sometimes a GA works directly with their PI, and it's just the two of them in the lab. Right. We're not expecting, there's only so much confidentiality you can ensure in that scenario. So from our end, that's not something that that we'll be making a fuss about in those instances, right? I think that, and the language that I have in here about anonymity is largely what was offered up in the university's last counterproposal by Brooke. You might recognize that, where Brooke mentions Florida's broad public records laws, and I simply moved such reports may be made anonymously. That was also language in Brooke's counterproposal last time that I moved elsewhere. I'm sensitive to the complaint that this is a lot and very detailed. I threw a lot of spaghetti at the wall hoping something would stick. I'm hoping to demonstrate an intent on our end to recognize a lot of the university's concerns with this language, right? Okay. Especially in that last paragraph. But I'll go over this for the sake of our members real quick. It is meaty, and we're open to trimming the fat as needed. So I'm looking specifically at 20.4. I wiped out all of the university's old language, but again, some of this still exists in our iteration here. I added an intent statement here, and that's where I want to start this discussion, because I think that the university has a policy under workplace violence that might be intended to capture some of this behavior we're concerned about, right? I'm not sure. I think that if it does, it's a little ambiguous, and I'm hoping that this contract language might be able to bridge that gap between the university's workplace violence policy and our concerns as a union. If you have a computer and you can look that up, I recommend that you do. Because towards the bottom of the screen, you'll see the disruptive conduct paragraph, which I think is intended to be a catch-all provision for any behavior that might disrupt university operations, right? And I think some of this might fall into there. So I'm offering this as kind of an extension of that language, right? Because ultimately, I think that the language we're concerned about may disrupt university operations, right? A PI who's abusive or a supervisor who's abusive might prevent a GA from doing their job to the best of their ability because of the mental health strain that they're unreasonably putting on the GA. So that being said, the language that is not highlighted has existed in some other iteration of these negotiations, right? It shouldn't be new. I'm going to focus on the highlighted stuff. The exceptions.
Before you go beyond the first one, this is clearly Brooks bailiwick, and so I won't say very much, but the term willful efforts to damage is just, I hesitate to say it, mind-boggling at this point. No matter how mean somebody is, the likelihood that that is intended to damage the mental health of the recipient is not obvious to me, and I'm not certain how we could discern that in any case. So, trying to figure out what's willful and what the ultimate intent of that willfulness is just baffling from my perspective. There, now, having jumped into Brooks Lake, I'll now let him correct me.
Well, I think that Paul raises a point that I think we'll propose some different language on. Obviously, there may be members of the university community who engage in willful efforts to damage the mental health or the academic health, otherwise working relationship. But I don't know if we want to state that in the contract. We acknowledge that that occurs, but I think the purpose of this change to the article is to provide mechanisms for people who experience that level of disruptive conduct that may damage their mental health to have an avenue to report that and have it investigated. We support that concept. I think we just, that willful efforts there is something that will probably kick back some different language.
Right.
If we can reach some agreement on.
I have one more quick question on 20.4, mental health inquiry. Is that new language?
It is. The last language is, I think Bill and Paul called the section complaints.
Right. Which
I think my issue is that it was a little broad.
Right. Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
It is new language. I didn't highlight it because we've used that terminology before.
Yeah.
So that's why it's not highlighted. Your
Okay,
points,
thanks.
your points are well taken.
Keep going.
More so with that last highlighted sentence in paragraph 1, I'm trying to tie this mechanism or suggest that this mechanism is an extension of that workplace violence language. I can understand why in a contract you don't want to write down and memorialize that employees are willfully engaging in certain kinds of behavior. I'm okay with changing that verbiage.
Okay.
So I'll welcome that. I'll see what you guys offer in exchange. No problem. And feel free to interrupt me as I go through this.
Oh, don't worry. We're not bashful about that.
Paragraph 2. Like I said, this highlighted portion here about the reports being made anonymously is something that was in the counter proposal from the university last time.
Okay.
Again, I'll repeat, we get it. We get it. We appreciate an effort to keep that stuff kind of quiet because I think it kind of helps your investigation, right? If it's not public and out there and the media is involved, right, we want to keep these things kind of contained for purposes of executing a meaningful investigation, right?
Okay.
Paul, Brooke, last time you mentioned that your concern was that we would be investigating the impact of conduct as opposed to conduct. The next sentence I've highlighted is intended to address that. In response to this report being made, and actually before I even get there, the very first sentence of this paragraph, you'll notice we had 2 provisions that would trigger an investigation. I've kind of scaled that back to just 1, because I think that this one that I've highlighted here can capture what I was calling provision B beforehand, right? So in order to kind of focus on conduct instead of impact, I've added the 3rd sentence here, whereby this report should kind of be a red flag for everyone. The fact that this red flag was raised should trigger an investigation on the underlying incident of misconduct that precipitated the report, right? And this will couple nicely with a section in the next paragraph. The last sentence of this paragraph, it's kind of a mirror of the 10.3 workplace investigation for health and safety investigation language. I've only added, the university may take action to remedy the instigating incidences. Perhaps the investigation results in no need for change. Perhaps the PI has demonstrated or the supervisor demonstrated an intent to change and the university is satisfied with that. The ball's in the university's court here. So that's kind of what I'm getting at with that. It's, again, a replication of language that already exists in this contract right in the section above. The last paragraph is intended to address a lot of the concerns the university raised in the last session. Nothing herein will require the university to comment on an employee's mental health, right? I don't think that the university is in a position to make a qualified statement about that, and even less so on someone's or remembering a mental health diagnosis. Nobody wants wants that, respectfully. Likewise, we
Oh,
understand there are,
that
go ahead.
has some HIPAA violation, HIPAA concerns as well.
Yes, yeah, agreed. We don't want to publish that kind of information, right?
I don't think we can legally.
Right. I'm with you there, Bill. Likewise, Brooke raised some concern that there's a lot of mechanisms in place already to address certain kinds of misconduct. We don't want this provision suggesting to a GA that this is their only means of recourse, right? There are other ways, and sometimes, depending on the underlying conduct, more appropriate ways to raise these issues. So that's why I've added the second sentence: nothing within shall preclude an employee from filing other formal complaints if they believe that there's been some violation of UF policy, right? For instance, there's a sexual harassment policy in place. That might be a better mechanism of addressing some of the underlying conduct we're concerned with than this provision in our contract.
Right. On that one, you talk about UF employee.
Yes. So that is actually, I've highlighted it because I guess I've changed the nature of it somewhat. But the UF employee language was also in the previous counter proposal by the university.
Okay.
Under 20.4. So that's the bulk of it. Like I said, I've admittedly thrown a lot of pasta at the wall, hoping that something will stick.
Okay.
But a lot of the concerns that you've raised are serious to us, and I think we're pretty close to coming to some resolution on this. I will say that this is obviously one of the major issues for us this round of negotiations.
Okay.
And it's the kind of thing that if we don't really come to an agreement to, could tank the entirety of a ratification here for us.
Okay.
That being said, I think that that's really not where we're at this point. We've had quite a few rounds back and forth, and I think we're slowly moving the dial. But I'm hoping I've given you enough language to work with and things to tinker with that we can solidify something like this relatively soon.
Okay.
Any other thoughts, gentlemen, or anyone?
Javier,
from
Javier, I think to your point, I think you have provided some really useful additions to this article in your proposal. And I think that the majority of what I see here is very close to a finished product that we can all agree upon. To Paul's comments earlier about the first edition there about willful efforts, we'll have some adjustments to that and some other minor adjustments we may suggest, but we'll need some time to talk about that as a group and send that to you hopefully this week, before the conclusion of this week, so that we can be prepared to get closer possibly to TAing this next week.
Awesome. That's really good news to hear, Brooke. And we'll look forward to that proposal. That's we're actively talking with our membership now about healthcare. So that's something that we can kind of bring up at the same time as well, to kind of gauge ultimate ratification. I think this will be a lot easier to ratify than healthcare, but I think both things will ultimately pass for purposes of the TA very soon, and for ratification later down the line. So thanks for sharing that news, Brooke. I'm going to check my chat real quick, see if anyone has shot a message. Okay, yeah, I don't really have any direct questions from the membership. So we can talk about healthcare if you gentlemen want now.
Let's do that.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. But for members that join us at the caucus later, I'll make this information available to everyone. The only other thing I want to, I guess, mention here about Article 20, Bill, is that there is language about the child care committee, right? I'm not, so after talking as a group, I don't know that we really feel strongly about changing that language. I guess we want the option to have a child care committee and child care committee meetings in the future. But right now, someone hasn't really stepped up and taken the lead as our own child care representative.
Yeah, and here's my concern about it.
Yeah.
It's been in the contract for a long time, and it's never taken off. And so I'm not sure that it even belongs in the contract anymore.
Well, so my understanding is one of the there's several reasons why this didn't take off, and I think there's a little bit of blame on both of our sides, admittedly. we had deadlines we had to comply with about kicking this off. We didn't meet those deadlines, and I think the university had to appoint someone, a specific member of the contract, and that person was never appointed. So I think it's.
Let
Go
me
ahead,
step
Bob.
in here because I remember this pretty well. So the deadline has created some problems, but we've almost made it once. There was one time that I'm aware of that we were actually almost able to meet the deadline, but one of the groups that has sent a representative, so there's GAU, Baby Gator, Graduate School, and HR. We got 3 of the 4 on board, but we weren't able to in time to meet with the 4th, and I can't remember which unit that was. So I mean, the only thing I can think of that I think might be able to make us happy and allow the committee to meet is if we made the language a little more flexible to where, not all four units had to send a representative.
Okay.
Scheduling gets much harder. It's a the whole difficulty with scheduling gets harder
Okay.
when there are more people you have to schedule.
So let me just counter that for a second. If it's that important, it seems to me both sides have an obligation to make it work. And I don't care how difficult it is to schedule.
They do. Keep in mind, we want, anytime we send a representative, we want that representative to be representative of the people they're representing. It's not redundant. So it also gets more difficult when you're talking about someone with a child.
All right.
So, yeah.
All right, let's shift to Gator Grad Care. I don't know if Dr. Sumfest has gotten on or not, and if she hasn't, we'll do our best to answer your question.
I don't see Dr. Sumfest among the 30 participants here.
And she has not replied to my email.
Okay.
Thanks, Paul. Yeah, so the only real questions we had for her, we already put on paper and sent to you all.
Okay.
I say put on paper, I mean that we emailed them.
Right.
Probably not the best time to use. The mail's probably pretty swamped nowadays. So I've done some, just to share with our members, we received what I think is a very good proposal from the university last week. And we're actively trying to gauge interest in that from everyone. So if you see text from us, please respond. But we had some follow-up questions, generally very basic stuff. One of the things that Dr. Sumfest said, and I want to be very careful about this, I can understand. I think the university might want to be very careful about it too. But there was an offer as part of this kind of massive healthcare proposal, something that wasn't in the written language, but she was willing to offer, was continued coverage for COVID-related issues.
Yep.
And there's some language on the COVID update website for the university. I was wondering if the language that would make it to the contract or Appendix F of the contract, which is talks about the healthcare benefits, would be precisely that same language, or if there would be any difference.
Well, here's my problem with putting it in the contract. The COVID stuff is going to go away at some point. So this would be more is a memorandum of understanding or something like that, rather than.
I understand.
Would you be willing to sign an MOU concurrently with TAing the healthcare article?
The what?
Would you be willing then to sign an MOU concurrently with TAing the healthcare article?
I don't understand the question.
I think what Bobby's asking is
COVID will eventually go away, right? Therefore, it's more of an issue for a memorandum of understanding.
Right.
That's what you just said. So I'm asking you, would you be willing to sign a memorandum of understanding to that effect concurrently with TAing Article 12? Is that a yes?
I don't, and you say Article 12. I'm not sure I understand.
So what Bobby's asking.
The healthcare article that we're discussing.
Pardon?
I think what Bobby's asking is if you're willing to do these two things simultaneously. Agree to Article 12 and at the same time concurrently sign an MOU to the effect of the COVID coverage.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
We'll wait till we get there, but That sounds reasonable.
Okay. Yeah. So, we're telling our membership that the university is willing to do this. So it's as a package deal.
Right.
Right. So their votes and what they're telling us is, contingent on what the university has told us that they
Right.
will continue coverage for these issues. So that's why we want both sides, and we want something in writing, because we're presenting that this thing will be in writing.
Oh, yeah.
So that's great. I understand. I understand it's also tied to the executive order, which is beyond any of our hands.
Right.
So I don't disagree that an MOU might not be an inappropriate mechanism as opposed to the 3-year contract. I do see Dr. Sumfest has joined us.
Yes, you just sent me that, right, Bill? That wasn't on my calendar. I'm
Okay.
I don't think I imagined that. And I have a meeting at the hospital at noon, so I'm going to have to leave early. What did you need from me?
Dr. Sumfest, hi. We sent some questions over to Bill. I'm not sure if you got those, but essentially they were contingencies for. So let me preface this. We're talking to our members right now about TAing the healthcare benefit changes as proposed by the university, right? And I think that's going very well.
Okay.
The only issues are the only things that we're really entertaining in terms of possible counterproposal, and I'm not suggesting that there would be a counterproposal at this point, right? But if there was a counterproposal, there are 3 items that we would consider just diluting into the premium.
Okay.
Instead of all the other items seem fine by our estimates. I don't think that you could, for purposes of infrastructure changes and communicating with providers about benefit changes before enrollment period, we're not going to touch those as far as our current conversations have gone, right?
Okay.
But those 3 items are the dental copay, increasing the calendar year deductible for tier 1 in area, and tier 1, tier 2 out of area by $100. We're talking about maybe doing $50 instead, seeing how that might change and wash into the premium. The 3rd item is the co-insurance change from 70-30 to 60-40%.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Dr. Sumfest.
Yeah. So on the co-insurance, Victoria or Kay, I can't remember who it was yesterday, sent a note that in order, you have to have parity with the student policy in order for you to be eligible to have Gator Care. So I already knew about that the co-insurance is going to have to stay at 70-30. It can't go to 60-40. And I was not aware of that. So we took off the table yesterday. I got to pull up the benefits 2021. So I did calculate that yesterday, and I don't know what I did with it, on what the change would be. Here it is. So removing that adds about 70,000 back in, or remove 70,000 from what we were taking away. And so that changes it to like a $5 PEPM, or a 2.2% increase. The others I'd have to go back and recalculate, because the dental copay, let me pull that up really quickly. I don't remember it off the top of my head. Give me a minute.
What was offered, I think, was a $20 copay.
Yeah, but it was worth quite a bit is the issue. It was
Just so I understand,
sorry,
it was
just so I understand, Javier, the idea here, even if you haven't gotten to the details yet, is to take these out of the savings and instead substitute a premium increase.
Mhm.
And
Correct,
the
Paul.
question for Jill is, how much would the premium increase have to be?
Yes.
right. So give me, I do have to go over to a meeting, so it won't take me very long, and I can get it to you this afternoon. I already knew about the co-insurance yesterday, and that went from, I think we had about a 1 point increase or something, or 1 percentage point. Wasn't that what? Yeah, So before we would had, with all of those in, a $3.52 PEPM deficit, or a 1.02% increase. So taking away 70,000, which is just an estimate, right?
Right,
Because
right.
things change with the coinsurance. That brought us down to 151,800 buy down. So that's how I subtracted 151,800 from the deficit of 383,369. That divided that number, which is about 231,169, by the number I've been using, which is the number of students, which was 3828. And then that gives you $60.39, and you divide that again by 12 because it's on a per month basis. So that drops you to $5.03 PEPM.
Okay.
That would be added to the employee only. So we're talking about a $5 increase per month. And then calculating that, looking at that increase for the employee only, gets you to a 2.2% increase overall. So that's what you would see on the other levels, the dependent levels. That's just that one benefit change. I'd have to sit down and figure out what we're removing because, or what we're adding back in, I guess is the right way to put it, because the dental copay, $20 per visit, was essentially about $24,000. And then the, so understanding the annual deductible, so that was about 6676, so around a 70,000 or so.
And Dr. Shemfest, on that, we were entertaining cutting it in half as opposed to washing
Right.
the entire thing.
Right, so it would be about maybe a $35,000 back in. So let me recalculate it. I'll show you my numbers if you want, just like, I'm taking a test. But if I think it's probably gonna double, just knowing, because you're talking about another 30,000 and another 24. It's probably going to be close to between $8 and $9 increase.
Right.
On
Okay.
Dr.
And
Shemfest,
maybe not. I don't know. We'll see.
I have one quick question, and then I understand you've got to go.
Yeah.
So I will, you'll be good with us. But you're working off a 3,800 figure, correct? 3,820 something.
3,828, because
Okay.
that was the number that we calculated based off of the 2019 claims data, and that was the average number of students at that time. So that's the same number. So, again, this is all, it's not based off of your current numbers, because anything like that. And this also does not, include the deficit that you're currently running, which is pretty high year to date.
We definitely understand. We understand that.
Yeah, so these changes are really necessary in order to be sustainable going forward. But let me it'll be later this afternoon. I have a meeting. It's like an interview over at the hospital, and then I may have time in between a 2 o'clock meeting today. But it won't take really long. It's just a matter of adding and subtracting and dividing, and I can get you a number on what that'll be.
Thank you,
Did you
Dr.
want to? You want to think about the just $20 a year benefit? We talked originally about just like a single. I don't know how easy that is to operationalize, but anyway, you just don't want any dental copay.
Well, we'll entertain. More information is good. If you're willing to give us more, if you're willing to figure that out, we'll certainly take a look at it. And see what kind of dent it puts in the premium. We were in our scenario the contingency we were entertaining was strictly off of the proposal from the university, which was just a flat out copay for every visit. So
and that's original. That when I went in, Javier, that was to get us the most savings, and that's why I put that one down. But there is if I can find it quickly enough. There was another option. Let me see, on the original dental copayment of $20 per benefit period, that was about a $15,000 savings. So it's not that much, not about $9,000, $10,000 less. But that was one of the original ones that I had proposed. And then the $50, I can tell you right away, increasing by $50 is, yeah, it cuts it in half. So it's about a $35,000 savings as opposed to the double. So let me like get over to the hospital. I'll get back. I'll send it, and I'll copy the UF folks as well as yourself.
Okay. And can you? I hate to just pile on work for you, Dr. Sumfess. You've done a lot for these negotiations already, but I guess if the current university proposal is probably no good because it has that co-insurance applied. So can we get I guess a modified proposal for us to share with our members, with the only change being that the co-insurance, that $60,000, $90,000 savings is removed from the current proposal and the premium adjusted accordingly. Does that make sense? Okay.
Well, that we have to, in order for you to, for the university to be able to offer this to you, it has to be on par with that, the same co-insurance that the student plan does. And that explains why that was set up in the beginning, because I didn't understand that. So yeah, that we can't do. Otherwise, okay, we couldn't go forward. So that is totally off. And I'll have to calculate the dental copay, and just, we already know it's about a $35,000 savings on the $50. But I can calculate that. And then I was able to find out from Florida Blue that we can, so currently now, the only, once the emergency order is over, you would only have access to virtual visits to New Directions behavioral health providers, where you wouldn't have access, because the only virtual visits going forward, once the emergency order is over, is for UF health providers. And what I had suggested to Kimberly was that we would look to see if we could operationalize, and everybody that is currently seeing a community provider that's part of New Directions could see them virtually at a $20 copay rather than a face-to-face $35 copay. So they can operationalize, and we will do that just for the GGC if that's something that you want to move forward with. So we would put that on the table. And then, as I said, that to make sure that everybody's comfortable, and this would be, that was when there was a $100 increase on the calendar year deductible. So I'd have to discuss this with Bill and Paul and Brooke, if we were going to still offer you that protection, that if there was an inpatient stay, that it would be at zero cost share for 2021. So I would have to throw that back on Bill, because that was sort of that reassurance that by increasing the deductible, we weren't going to hit people that got admitted. And as I said, we really haven't seen that on the graduate assistants, but if that's a concern, that's still, I think, something that Bill and Paul would have to agree on, but we can do it. So
okay.
I'll calculate that, get it back to you. The coinsurance, totally off the table. The other questions is whether or not that you want to see that kind of increase.
Yeah, it's just a contingencies. We're just entertaining those contingencies. Okay. We're interested in seeing the university's modified proposal, and then what if we made these little changes? How would that premium figure change? But we'll be treating the proposal differently and much more seriously than those contingencies, right?
Okay. So I'll calculate that and get it back to you, but it's probably going to be a little later in the afternoon.
I understand. No worries. We probably just want to have something, well before our meeting next Wednesday, and we technically can't, we can't accept any offers until those specific changes are made.
Absolutely, and I will have it to you this afternoon. It doesn't take me long to do it. It's just that I have to sit down and make sure I write it out so I don't miss anything and don't miscount.
And if you don't get it till tomorrow morning, that's fine.
Oh no, this afternoon's fine. It's just I have a couple meetings in between. And I'm sorry, did someone have a
sorry, I was gonna ask a question. You've mentioned that it would be potentially doubling the employee percentage of the premium. Would this affect the employer percentage of the premium?
I can't speak for the employer. I'm just telling you what it would do on a increase on a per employee per month. That's not in my purview. That's the total amount, right?
Okay.
That's the total amount. That $5 I was talking about, just changing the co-insurance, that is not, I'm not saying that's $5 more that is going to come out of your pocket.
Understood.
That's just $5 more that's added to the total premium.
Okay. No, I understand, because currently, and again, this is probably for Bill and Paul, the employer, you guys are currently covering what I think Dr. Sumpa said was like 92.5% of the total premium. So again, I would just want to make sure that the total premium is at least staying within competitive percentage rates.
Actually, it's it was more like,
yeah, it was high. It was very high. It was a very high percentage considering other employer group insurance rates. Yes.
In fact, when I retire, I'm thinking about going to graduate school.
Well,
Paul's going to block you from getting an assistantship.
Come on.
Yeah. So again, I just wanted to make sure that those percentages were staying at least within a competitive rate with other group insurance plans. That's my only concern, because again, I am aware that you guys are.
Yeah, I don't figure that. We just set we just tell you what the rate is. The employer sets what percentage is their contribution versus the employee.
Understood.
But I can tell you that I don't, Shands doesn't pay 96% of the money.
I know. No, trust me, when we asked that percentage and when I saw it, I was a little shocked. So, but again, making sure that it stays competitive with other graduate school employer coverage percentages. That's
so
really
I'm going to jump off, because otherwise I'm going to be, so, and I will get you that bill this afternoon.
Okay. Okay.
Hey, Dr. Sumfest.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sumfest.
Sorry.
Yep. Before we sign off, there was a chat observation. The question was our bargaining seems to exemplify the fact that the administration opposes this goal to improve healthcare insurance. I would challenge that. We have a financial difficulty, but we have a very robust program of healthcare for grad assistants, and our goal is to make sure it still retains financial viability.
Thank you, Dr. Connellan, for responding to that. But my issue is that for this particular, because this is healthcare deficit, that's not a large number in my opinion. Like, that's how many people are insured by this program? Like, it's in the thousands, right? So 300,
about 4,000.
Yeah, $300,000 is not that much money. I mean, to me it is, but for this particular labor cost, I don't think that's a huge deficit, but it's not my part right now to discuss that, so I'll go mute.
Okay. I just wanted to make that observation. That's all.
And Ryan, this is a public forum, so you are welcome to express yourself by law. So don't feel like you need to go mute because you're not on the bargaining team or representing the university here. It's your right to speak up.
Thank you, Javier.
Certainly. Bill, you've mentioned a few times, and I'm not challenging you on this. I don't have the means to challenge you on this, but you've mentioned that our healthcare plan is kind of robust comparatively. I'm wondering if are you willing to share that kind of data if you've actually engaged in comparative analysis with other healthcare plans? Because we get that question a lot from our members. How does this compare to like FSU and I'm sorry, Bill?
Let me see what I can dig up. I know there
Okay.
are some University of Michigan and the University of California systems that are different.
Yeah.
But I think across the country, what I see is ours is very robust.
Okay, yeah, and that's helpful from our end too, right? So that we can, if we don't just hear it, there are numbers to support that claim.
Right.
So we know what we're dealing with comparatively, and
Okay, let me see what I can dig up.
Okay, thank you, Bill. I think from our end, we don't really have any other issues. I will kind of reiterate the point that I've mentioned before. We can TA a healthcare proposal. It's not going to be cemented until we actually ratify it. I think we're on course to do both comfortably. I've got a hand raised. Emily, I'll address you. I'll open the room up to you shortly. But a big thing for us is this mental health inquiry investigation, whatever we choose to call it.
Right.
The other issues are not as important to us, quite frankly. I think you can imagine why this is a big one for us. And again, I think we're making a lot of progress here. And I think we're really on course to nip that in the bud as well. But that being said, we're also a healthcare agreement is also very contingent on this representation that COVID coverage will continue.
Right.
So we'd like to see that in writing as well, what it would look like in a final form if we TA anything.
Right.
So looking forward to quite a bit of information from you guys. Emily, I think you're unmuted, so, okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, everybody. I just wanted to make a comment with respect to any comparative numbers for healthcare coverage by the university that you were requesting be put together to understand how our benefits compare to others. I just suggest including a lot of information about presence or absence and strength of unions with regard to what's allowed in certain states. So University of Oklahoma it's not a union-y state. There is no grad student union, there never has been, and their healthcare option is garbage, whereas Oregon has a collective bargaining thing. They get dues from all members, or rather all units within the bargaining unit, all individuals within the bargaining unit, and their healthcare is magnificent. So I just suggest that be taken into consideration.
Yeah, unfortunately, assembling that kind of data would probably take me about a month.
So Emily, when we get that kind of information from the university, we actually have data on that. So I think that your idea is excellent, right? It's well taken. For instance, North Carolina does not have, and Georgia Tech don't have excellent healthcare plans that are still top 10. We're going to be looking at kind of, we're aware of, and we've done a lot of work on what universities are unionized, which aren't. So that's something that's a gap that we can potentially fill in the data.
Okay, excellent. Thank you.
Yeah, no, your point is very well taken, though. And it's something that we've raised at the table before, but this information would go a long way, Bill. As you can see, people are interested in this stuff.
Okay.
So, all right. I don't know that we have anything else from our end of the table to discuss today.
No, do we. I just would emphasize the urgency of finishing off the Gator grad care issue because Dr. Sumfest is up against a tight deadline.
We understand. When we get that additional information from her and the new modified formal proposal, we're already acting on. We're already reaching out to our members. So I think it's only a matter of time.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill.
I have nothing more.
Okay.
Thanks,
thank
everybody.
All right.
You, hey, Paul. Thank you. Thank you, Judy. I know you were around, and thank you, Becky, for making sure things run smoothly. Guys, join us at our caucus meeting. You should have gotten information. So we can kind of touch on these topics. If you have additional questions, I'd be happy to answer them, and we'll discuss where we go from here. Thank you all.